Sometimes a story does not begin with one event. It begins with a feeling. A name here, another name there, a disappearance, a death, a laboratory, a base, a pattern that seems impossible to ignore and still too incomplete to trust. This is one of those stories. Not a solved network, not a proven conspiracy, but something more unsettling than that. Overlap. The kind of overlap that keeps appearing between scientists, defense figures, research institution, and missing people. Just enough to force the question. Because when names start clustering around NASA, JPL, Caltech, AFRL, Los Alamos, and Wright-Patterson, you're no longer looking at random headlines in isolation. You're looking at the edge of a map. And the most dangerous moment in any investigation is the moment you can finally see the outline, but not yet the center. Tonight, we're not here to claim what has been proven. We're here to examine what has begun to connect, what still remains missing, and the gaps we cannot afford to fake our ways across. Welcome back to UFO to UAP, the Disclosure Report. I'm your host, Matt Tones. Thank you for joining us. Remember, please subscribe and share the podcast. Today's episode is called The Missing Network, Scientists, Defense Leaks, and the Gaps We Still Can't Close. Today's episode is different. This is not a case closed episode. This is not a solved pattern. It is not a claim that a hidden hand has already been proven. This is an emerging network episode. Because when you lay these names side by side, Frank Maywold, Carl Groomer, Michael David Hicks, Monica Reza, Melissa Cassius, Anthony Chavez, and William Neil McCaslin, something real does begin to appear. Not a confirmed conspiracy, but a structure. A structure with two institutional clusters, one possible bridge between them, and several important gaps that still need to be confirmed before any serious researcher should overstate the pattern. So today's question is not, have we proved these cases are connected? We have not. The better question is there enough overlap here to justify serious scrutiny? Yes, there is. Let's begin with the first cluster. Cluster 1, NASA, JPL, Caltech, infrared, and biosignature science. This part of the network is the strongest. Frank Maywold is clearly tied to JPL, and not just in a generic engineering sense. JPL's Strategic University Research Partnerships material lists him as principal investigator on unambiguous detection of biosignatures by action spectroscopy. That matters because it places his name directly inside publicly documented biosignature-related research. Carl Groomer sits in the Caltech IPAC infrared astronomy world. NASA JPL reporting connected him to major Spitzer exoplanet work, including early atmospheric detection efforts involving distant worlds. That makes him highly relevant to infrared detection and exoplanet science, even if alien life detection would be an overstatement of his exact portfolio. Michael David Hicks is also part of the JPL scientific ecosystem. His memorialized record ties him to research on the physical properties of comets and asteroids. That is not the same as biosignature science, but it is absolutely part of the broader NASA JPL planetary and small body research environment. And then there is Monica Reza. This is where the pattern gets more interesting and more fragile. I do have a credible secondary source indicating a JPL connection. A LinkedIn post appealing for help finding Monica describes her as director of the materials processing group at NASA JPL. This is not the same as an official JPL staff page, and we should not pretend it is. But it is detailed, contemporaneous, and professionally framed enough to treat as a meaningful lead rather than random rumor. That gives us the first intelligence takeaway. There is a real NASA JPL Caltech adjacent cluster here, not imaginary, not vague, but visible in public material. Now let's move to the second cluster, Cluster 2, AFRL, Wright-Patterson, Los Alamos, New Mexico Defense Research. This cluster is different in tone, but equally real. William Neil McCaslin is the clearest anchor point. His official Air Force biography shows he served in major space research, acquisition, and operations roles, and later commanded the Air Force Research Laboratory. Public reporting on his disappearance confirms that he is a real missing person case and that his career sat deep inside advanced U.S. defense research. AFRL's collaboration with Los Alamos National Laboratory is also real and publicly documented. AFRL has official material showing cooperation with Los Alamos, Sandia, and the wider New Mexico research environment. So the AFRL LANL institutional bridge is not speculative, it exists. That matters because Anthony Chavez now has a much stronger Los Alamos link than we had earlier. A Los Alamos publication identifies an Anthony Chavez who started at Los Alamos in 1989 as part of the machinist apprenticeship program. That does not prove he worked on classified or exotic programs, but it materially strengthens the claim that he was genuinely LANL connected. Melissa Cassius also appears credibly connected to Los Alamos National Laboratory. Reporting says she attempted to go to work at LANL on the day she disappeared, realized she had forgotten her badge, and returned home to work remotely. That is enough to treat the LANL employment link as credible, even if her exact job title still needs stronger sourcing. That gives us the second intelligence takeaway. There is a real AFRL Los Alamos, New Mexico Defense Research cluster behind these cases. Now we come to the most important unresolved question in the entire network. The possible bridge, Monica Reza. If this pattern is going to become more than two adjacent clusters, Monica Reza is the likely bridge. Here's why. On one side, the LinkedIn sourcing places her inside NASA JPL materials leadership. On the other side, online narrative building has tried to connect her to AFRL, Wright-Patterson, and even to McCaslin through supervision or even project overlap. And this is where we have to be disciplined. I did not find strong official documentation proving that Monica worked at AFRL Wright-Patterson or McCaslin directly supervised her on her projects. That is the largest unresolved gap in the whole pattern. It is also the most important one, because if that bridge is eventually confirmed, then what we have is no longer just two clusters. We have a linked network connecting space science, advanced materials, AFRL, and Los Alamos adjacent environments. But right now, that bridge remains probable in narrative terms, not confirmed in documentary terms. That gives us the third intelligence takeaway. The network is real at the cluster level. The bridge is still not fully proven. Now, let's step through the cases themselves because the nature of the events matters too. The event pattern. This is not one type of incident. McCaslin is missing. Groomer was killed and authorities arrested a suspect. Anthony Chavez is a real missing person case. Frank Maywold and Michael Hicks are older deaths now being folded into the current online narrative retrospectively. So even at the event level, this is not a tidy pattern. It is a mixed field of disappearances, a homicide, older deaths, and retrospective clustering by the internet. That means any responsible researcher has to separate real overlap from retrospective narrative compression. What is strong and what isn't? Here is the strongest version of the case. There appears to be two genuine professional ecosystems represented in these names. One is NASA JPL Caltech Infrared Biosignature Adjacent Science Cluster. The other is an AFRL Los Alamos, New Mexico Defense Research Cluster. Here is the weakest version of the case. We do not yet have enough to say that all these people worked on one coherent UFO, alien life, or clandestine reverse engineering axis. And we do not yet have enough to say there is one confirmed coordinated cause behind the deaths and disappearances. That is exactly where bad analysis begins, and we're not going there. So what should researchers and journalists watch next? Three things. First, Monica Reza's official employment and project history. If a stronger primary source confirms both JPL leadership and AFRL-linked project work, that would materially change the map. Second, direct documentation of McCaslin-linked program oversight that touches materials, propulsion, or external lab partnerships. His AFRL leadership is confirmed, but the project-level bridge still needs proof. Third, cleaner employer and program records for Anthony Chavez and Melissa Cassius. LANL adjacency is now credible, but the exact scope of their work still matters if anyone wants to argue they sat inside the same technical ecosystem. So the final assessment, where does that leave us? Not with a solved network, but not with randomness either. The most disciplined conclusion is this. There is enough evidence to justify serious attention to a two-cluster pattern, one centered on NASA JPL Caltech science, the other on AFRL Los Alamos defense research. What remains unproven is the stronger claim that these clusters were directly bridged through Monica Reza or any other one individual in a way that turns adjacency into a single integrated network. And that means this is now a legitimate research story, not because we can already prove the conclusion, but because we can finally see the outline of the question. This has been UFO to UAP, the Disclosure Report. I'm Matt Tones. Thanks for listening. Again, remember, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your mum about this episode.